All right, Marvels. Before we come back from the break, I just wanted us to review what we had learned before the break and before our trip. So here is a sample problem. A flower design is created by placing 14 roses in row 1, 22 in row 2, 30 in row 3, etc. If 4,154 total roses are used in the design, how many rows of roses are there? As we're looking at this, we should be thinking that this is a problem about series and sequences. And more specifically, when I look at my numbers 14, 22, and 30, I should be thinking the increase there is by adding on 8 versus an increase by multiplying by some value. So because there's adding on, I know that these are for an arithmetic sequence, and these are the two equations that I'm going to be wanting to know. Based on the information here, I'm going to be wanting to find the information that allows me to fill out these equations. And I'm probably not going to know everything, so I'm probably going to have to set up a system, but that's what I'm going to start with right now. So I'm going to list what it is that I know. I know that a sub 1 equals 14. I do not know a sub n. I know that the common difference is 8. I know that the sum of all the values is 4,154. And since I don't know a sub n, I really don't know n either. And in this setup, I have two unknown variables, and I have two equations given to me from this two equations. And so if you have two variables and two unknowns and two equations, you can set up a system. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I start with this first one, putting in everything I know that I don't know a sub n, but I do know that a sub 1 is 14, so I can substitute that in, plus n I'm not sure about, but d I know is 8. Then I can also do the same for the second equation. I know that s sub n is 4,154. I know no n right now, but I do know that a sub 1 is 14, and a sub n is unknown. Now, I'm trying to solve this system, and if you think back to Algebra 1, I have equation 1 and equation 2, and if I think about what's isolated in equation 1, I have a sub n all by itself, which means I can substitute this entire value in equation 2 for this a sub n. So the 14 plus parentheses n minus 1 times 8 is going to substitute down into equation 2 for a sub n, and that's going to give me this new equation to work with. 4,154 is equal to n over 2 times parentheses 14 plus n minus 1 in parentheses times 8. Close those parentheses. So this part here was entirely substituted from equation 1. Now I have one equation and only one unknown. I have an n here and an n here. And if I simplify and do my math correctly, I should be able to get to a point where I can solve this problem. So let me go ahead and do that. My first step is to work inside the parentheses. I'm going to distribute this 8 back into the n minus 1 term. So n over 2 times parentheses 14 plus 8n minus 8. Now, inside parentheses again, I'm still in grouping symbols. I have 14 plus 14 minus 8. Not the 8n, because that's not a similar term, but 14 plus 14 is 28, but then take 8 away, and I only have 20. Now I have 20 plus 8n in parentheses times n over 2, and I'm actually going to distribute this term, treat it like it was a regular fraction, even though there's a variable in there, and distribute to the terms inside the parentheses. So that means I have 20n over 2 plus 8n squared over 2. Now, because we're great math students, we know that both of those will simplify, so I'll have 10n plus 4n squared, and that's all equal to 4,154. At this point, you could graph both sides on your graphing calculator and see where they intersect, or we could try to just create a quadratic. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to, for simplicity, move the left side over to the right side and rearrange the order. So I'll have 0 is equal to 4n squared plus 10n minus 4,154. You could attempt to do this by hand, or at this point it is 100% acceptable to reach for your graphing calculator and do this on the calculator instead. So what I'm going to do is reach for my calculator, turn it on, and then go ahead and try to graph this. To graph it, I'm going to go to a new document. I'm going to add the graph. And the one thing you have to really remember is that you don't input x, but, excuse me, backwards. You don't input n, but you do input x. So it'll be 4x squared plus 10x minus 4,154. And naturally, I can't see anything on that. And I know that the screen is really bright and you can't see it either. But what we need to do is actually change the view. And I don't care about the y-axis, but let's think about what I do care about. I do care about the x-axis and seeing where this problem has a solution on the positive side. Remember, it has to be positive because I have to add together a positive number of values. So I'm changing my x minimum, not at all. I'm going to leave it at -10, but in the next one down, it's at 10 currently. I'm just going to add a 0 to that and make it 100, because in most of our problems have not exceeded 100 rows. And so wherever this crosses the x-axis between 0 and 100 is going to be the solution for the number of rows of roses in this particular problem. Because this doesn't affect the y-axis at all, just leave it. I know that it's going to be a parabola, but I don't need to see the whole shape just to get an answer. And when I do this, there is a line that is crossing through the middle of my graph. Now, in order to figure out what that graph is, I'm going to analyze it, figure out what that 0 is, give a lower boundary, cross to an upper boundary. I know you can see that, and my dot has already popped up with the solution of 31.000. That makes me feel really good that I got a whole number answer. And so when I give my answer here, I know now that n equals 31, which means there are 31 rows of roses. And that's how you do that, folks. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in class very, very, very soon.